Right around the beginning of the decade, because of how the NBA started reforming draft lottery odds and implementing the play-in tournament, a lot of teams actually made moves to prioritize winning. Meanwhile, the OKC Thunder went the other way around and they instead made aggressive trades to accumulate a ton of future draft assets. But back then, many felt like what OKC was doing was kind of meaningless. Both fans and the media questioned how Sam Presti could even possibly maximize the value of all those picks he's been hoarding. Well, let's first look at the tip of the iceberg, aka how some of those picks have already helped the Thunder the past two NBA drafts. During the 2024 season, by virtue of them having the second best record in the league, the Thunder owned the 29th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. But because they also owned the top 4 protected first rounder from Houston, which they got all the way back from the Russell Westbrook trade, OKC also ended up having the 12th overall selection in the draft, which is 17 picks higher than their actual draft slot. And they used this lottery pick to land one of the most skilled players from the 2024 draft class in 6'8" guard Nikola. Then the following year, this 2025, by virtue of them having the best regular season record, OKC owned the 30th overall pick in the draft. But because they also owned the top 14 protected pick from Miami, which they got as part of the Paul George trade, OKC ended up also having the 15th overall pick in the draft, which is 15 picks higher than their actual draft slot. OKC used this pick to draft Thomas Sorber, who was considered by many as the most talented big man prospect from the 2025 draft class. But the crazy thing is, both Nikola and Thomas Sorber, who are both expected to be high-level contributors for the Thunder right off the bat, so far haven't even played a single NBA game because of injuries. However, that's something the Thunder probably aren't even worried about. They just won the NBA championship and so far, their title defense is off to such a dominant start. OKC's won 21 of their first 22 games this year, putting them on pace to produce 78 wins this season, something that has never been accomplished by any team ever. In addition, OKC also holds a plus 15.2 net rating, which would also be the best net rating put up by a team throughout the course of NBA history. Yet, despite all this dominance, with a clear possibility of winning back-to-back titles, because of Sam Presti's massive draft accumulation project at the start of the decade, the Thunder still look primed to land high selections in the upcoming drafts, not only in 2026, but even in 2027, 2028, and even possibly beyond. So the question is, how did the rest of the NBA even allow the OKC Thunder to get to this point? First, let's look at the upcoming 2026 NBA draft, wherein OKC could end up having as much as 4 first-round selections. All in all, in 2026, OKC owns a top 4 protected pick from the 76ers, a top 8 protected pick from the Jazz, and they will also get the 2 most favorable out of their own, the Clippers and the Rockets' first-round picks. And so far, based on the current team standings, it seems like the Jazz and the Clippers picks are on pace to land in the top 10 of the draft. First, there's the Utah Jazz pick, which hasn't been talked about a lot. The Thunder acquired this pick way back during the 2021 offseason in what was basically a salary dump for Utah, when they sent a 2024 top 10 protected pick to the Thunder together with Derek Favors and the $19 million remaining of his contract, while in exchange, OKC only needed to send the Jazz a 2027 second-round pick. Well, the pick that Utah sent OKC initially had top 10 protections in 2024 and 2025, but because it didn't convey the past 2 years, the protection in that pick has now been reduced to top 8 this 2026, meaning this pick gets conveyed to the Thunder in the upcoming draft only if it falls outside of the top 8. So basically, the objective for Utah is to lose enough games this season for them to keep this pick for themselves. However, as of now, the Jazz haven't totally fallen off the standings. They currently are the 11th seed in the Western Conference, ahead of the Mavs, Kings, Clippers, and Pelicans, and this currently projects Utah to land the 9th overall pick in the draft, which means their pick likely conveys to OKC if the season ended today. Well, sure, it's still early in the season, and Utah could still very well try to tank towards the end of the year for them to increase the odds of keeping their pick. However, the obvious difference with this Utah team compared to the past couple seasons has been the development of Keyonte George, who's actually starting to play like a borderline top 15 point guard, while at the same time, Lauri Markkanen has also been back to playing at an all-star level to start the year. And if this continues, the Jazz will have no choice but to hand over a probable top 10 pick this upcoming draft to the Thunder. And then there's the unprotected LA Clippers pick, which everyone talks about. Obviously, the Paul George trade already gave OKC Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, as well as the pick that they used to draft Jalen Williams. But then the Clippers once again look primed to give the Thunder another high pick in the upcoming 2026 draft. Well, looking at it, the Clippers came into the season with a retooled bench and championship aspirations, but instead, they've cratered on both ends of the floor to start the year. Age has finally caught up with Chris Paul, Bradley Beal is out for the season with a fractured hip, and Kawhi Leonard has already missed some time due to a foot strain. The Clippers have lost 8 of their last 10 games, and they currently have the 5th worst record in the entire NBA, meaning if the season ended today, the Clippers would convey a pick to OKC that likely lands within the top 7 of the draft. But sure, since the bottom of the Western Conference has been looking so bad this year, let's assume a more reasonably positive outcome for the Clippers. Let's say they sneak into the play-in tournament as a 9 or 10 seed, and let's say they somehow make the playoffs as the 8 seed. In that case, the Clippers would still likely convey the 15th overall selection to the Thunder after being presumably eliminated by them in the first round. Even with that scenario, the Thunder's front office would still likely find a special talent within the late lottery range, especially in what is considered to be a stacked 2026 draft class. But then, what if the Clippers really fall to the bottom of the standings towards the end of the year, or what if they make the play-in tournament but somehow get into some Dallas Mavericks situation, wherein they land a top overall pick even with very small odds of doing so? This now gives the Thunder a top pick in the upcoming draft, which is expected to have some game-changing talent at the top. Just imagine OKC landing someone like Duke forward Cam Boozer. As a hyper-talented do-it-all type of forward, Boozer would immediately step in as another complementary shot creator who could further enhance the Thunder's drive and kick game with his paint gravity, his ability to attack the rim, and to draw fouls. But even without necessarily having the ball in his hands a lot, I think Boozer could thrive as part of the Thunder's movement-heavy offense simply by utilizing his elite passing vision and his solid outside shooting. Add to that his 6'9", 250-pound frame, his quick hands, and his physicality on defense, as well as his ability to grab rebounds, and I can easily envision Boozer playing the 4 spot alongside Chet Holmgren at the 5, forming an unstoppable frontcourt tandem to complement Shai, J-Dub, Lou Dort, and Cason Wallace at the wing in the long term. The crazy thing is, the possibility of landing elite talent up top in the draft doesn't end in 2026 for the Thunder, because instead of being satisfied with the assets they already acquired from the Paul George trade, the past couple years, OKC added more value to some of those first-round picks by trading them for future pick swaps. Back in 2023, as part of the Clippers and Sixers trade which sent James Harden to LA, the Thunder acted as a third team to help facilitate moving assets, and as part of that transaction, the Thunder sent Philadelphia the least favorable of the Rockets, Clippers, and their own pick in the 2026 draft, and in exchange, OKC received the rights to swap their own 2027 first-round pick with the Clippers. Well, sure, looking back, what the Thunder did, trading a sure first-round pick for a pick swap further down the line might have seemed like an overpay, but it actually made sense for OKC given that they already owned a surplus of 2026 first-round picks, so it made sense for them to actually try and increase their chances of having higher selections in the 2027 draft. Now, the Thunder currently own 3 first-round selections in 2027, which includes their own pick, a top 5 protected pick from Denver, and a top 16 protected pick from San Antonio. And because of that earlier transaction, OKC will have the right to swap the lesser of their own pick and the Nuggets pick with the Clippers selection. And if the Clippers somehow continue their downward spiral until 2027, this will again give OKC another chance to draft 2 times higher than their actual draft slot. But then, during the 2024 trade deadline, OKC made another low-key transaction when they traded a Clippers 2024 first-rounder which was projected to be in the mid-20s to the Dallas Mavericks, wherein in exchange, the Mavs gave the Thunder rights to swap first-round picks with them in 2028. Well, looking back at those transactions, it actually made sense for the Thunder to continue betting against the Clippers in terms of acquiring pick swaps. OKC already drained them of their draft assets, plus the Clippers have few young players with significant upside. But then, what the Thunder did, betting against the Dallas Mavericks 3 years into the future was such a bold move, considering Luka Doncic was still in Dallas at that time. So why did the Thunder decide to make that move in the first place? Well, maybe because even before that, the Mavs had already given up control of most of their draft picks to keep building around Luka. They gave up their 2029 and 2030 first-round picks as part of the trades that landed them Kyrie Irving and Grant Williams, and they were also about to give up their 2027 first-round pick for PJ Washington during the 2024 trade deadline. So perhaps Sam Presti felt that a team leveraging its future so quickly probably was a decent bet to get a pick swap from, and he was right. Fast forward a couple months after that transaction, Luka Doncic has been traded by Dallas, and now the Mavs seem headed for an inevitable rebuild, and that pick swap they owe the Thunder suddenly looks primed to give OKC another chance to move up higher in the 2028 draft. Now, with all those future picks and pick swaps that's still left to be conveyed to them the next couple years, it's starting to look like OKC could just be the most dominant team ever to receive high draft picks relative to their win-loss record in consecutive years. And again, that's with the possibility of them getting even more lucky by landing a top 5 or even a top 3 pick in those future drafts. Well, a franchise landing high selections in consecutive drafts even after successful seasons isn't unprecedented in NBA history. As an example, there's the Boston Celtics, who were able to fully utilize the draft pick haul they acquired from the Brooklyn Nets via the Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett trade. In 2016, despite winning 48 games, the Celtics still got the 3rd overall pick in the draft via Brooklyn, which they used to draft Jaylen Brown. And then the following year in 2017, after winning 53 games, Boston still landed the 1st overall pick in the draft again via Brooklyn, but then they traded down to number 3 and selected Jason Tatum. And then the next year in 2018, they could have owned the 8th overall pick in the draft again via Brooklyn had they not traded that pick to the Cavs as part of the Kyrie Irving deal. I think this is the type of draft pick run that the Thunder could be looking at the next couple years, likely at lower selections but potentially over a longer span of time. Though the thing is, right now, beyond 2028, the only additional first-round pick that OKC owns from another team is a top 5 protected pick from Denver in 2029, which is why I won't be surprised if the Thunder still tries to roll over some of their upcoming draft picks into future pick swaps. For starters, because OKC's current roster situation may only allow them to add one first-round pick into their roster next season, it's possible that they won't even use all their selections in the 2026 and 2027 NBA drafts, which is why I think they would most likely trade their worst 2026 or 2027 first-round picks for pick swaps in 2028, 2029, or even later. Also, moving some of their draft assets further down the line makes even more sense when you look at the fact that soon, the Thunder will face a roster crunch because of their expensive payroll, which in turn could limit their ability to build a deep roster given potential second apron penalties. Looking at it, by the start of the 2028 to 2029 season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will already be 30 years old, while J-Dub and Chet Holmgren will also be in their mid-20s entering their prime years. So that is the time the Thunder really needs to have some supplementary depth to support their big three. But the problem is, that same 2028 offseason, the contracts of AJ Mitchell, Isaiah Joe, Nikola and Jay Will would have just expired, and by that time, it's just gonna be hard to re-sign those guys to new market rate contracts, assuming OKC's already signed Cason Wallace and Lou Dort to brand new deals, especially given the massive amount of cash the team has already committed to their big three. So now, this is when the importance of those future draft assets will become even more apparent for the Thunder. By the 2028 to 2029 season, a couple players that OKC drafted in 2026 and 2027 who are still gonna be on cheap rookie contracts are likely already contributing as high-level rotation pieces. And maybe by that time, the Thunder have also stockpiled even more future draft assets in 2029 and 2030, which they could use to keep drafting young talent that would potentially replace the expensive deals of players such as Alex Caruso. And with this cycle of trading draft picks and even expiring contracts for more future assets down the line, maybe the Thunder could just continue building and building championship caliber rosters throughout the next 5 to 6 years, or up until the time the team's ownership allows them from a financial perspective. In the end, this is just a nightmare scenario for all other 29 NBA teams, as the Thunder, who are already primed to win back-to-back titles with their current roster, who's also the best team in the league in terms of finding talent in the draft, has also found a way to maximize draft assets to continuously produce depth that could support Shai, J-Dub, and Chet up until their contracts all expire by the 2031 season. Thank you guys if you've actually made it this far into the video, but what are your actual thoughts on the potential dynasty that the OKC Thunder are building? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. This has been Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.